Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul, another installment of the Clean and Press series for Startling Comics number 48 with this great Schomburg airbrush cover. This is Noah's book, and we're gonna do we're gonna start the wet clean on the book. So, as you recall, we did a full assessment. I talked to Noah about some of the risks involved, especially with the friable space here, but also with this staple. So he knows that we may lose this staple because it is very rusty. This whole book was wet at some point. But this is a great Needor publication, and it's worth taking care of. It's worth saving. It's worth doing everything we can to preserve it. So we are going to attempt to remove the staple today, and I'm going to use some tools that you've seen me use on other videos. The first is this capable staple tool. The reason why we're using this is because we do not want to put any force on the staple, on the paper rather, while we're removing the staple. So we want to bend the staple against the staple, right? We want to stabilize the metal, and we're going to do that. This tool has a groove. We're going to use that groove to stabilize this prong like that, and now that's fixed pretty well in space. And we're going to use the flawless staple tool, also from Immaculate Comics, another of Rick Morgan's inventions. And we're going to very gently pry this staple up, and this staple is thin, but maybe it's not brittle. All right, so I was able to pick that staple up without breaking it off, and now I'm gonna switch over to this block of plastic that I prefer just because it gives me even more ability to stabilize the whole page. So the staple arm is up in this hole right now, and I've flattened all the paper, so I'm stabilizing everything. And we're going to try to just pick this other staple arm up. It's so thin. I think we're going to end up replacing this just because it's lost so much material to rust over the years that it's very, very thin. And any amount of rust removal is just going to leave us with not much material. And it's so thin that I'm also concerned that at any moment we could break one of these arms off. So we'll try to avoid that. There we go. Okay, so top is top. And I will label it. Don't think it matters too much, but I will get a piece of tape and I will label the top there. And now we can free the body of this book, all the interior leaves, from the cover. And you see how that rust has just worked with the paper to just literally disintegrate holes in the paper. That's one of the reasons why we need to get that taken care of. All right, so I'm gonna just set the interior aside for a moment. That'll be something we work on after we clean the cover, and here's our cover. So this cover is now ready for aqueous cleaning. So we'll jump into that in just a moment. I've got Noah's copy of Startling Comics number 48 with this great Schomburg airbrush cover. And we've removed the cover from the rest of the book. It's time now to do, we've already dry cleaned it. It's time now to do a wet clean. And we're going to be we're going to work immediately on cleaning and deacidification. I'm going to start working on getting rid of some of these stains. So I have my photography tray. Here I have a piece of Hollytex underneath to support my paper. I'm probably going to be doing photo bleaching in conjunction. So I want to start, as I've talked about before, start with the least obtrusive surface. So this interior, obviously, I don't think Noah intends to have this slabbed, at least not today, but you know, eventually if it does end up in somebody's collection and slabbed, obviously you're not going to see the interior. So if you make mistakes, make them here first, right? So always start your restoration in an unobtrusive location. What we're going to be bathing it in today is calcium hydroxide. I've explained this before, but what we've done is we've made a saturated solution of calcium hydroxide. This is that solution. I know it's saturated because I've added the calcium hydroxide, I've shooken it, and then I've allowed it to settle, and I still have salt on the bottom. So this solution up here is saturated. We know that the saturation point is, I believe, 1.6 grams per liter. So we know that that's what that solution is above the salt line. And what I've done is I've taken that and mixed it 50-50 with my tap water. And that's what I'm using here. Now, you'll notice I have often done a liter wash, but I only have 200 mils right here. And the reason for that is that I actually want to have a very thin layer here. I just want the paper to be wet without it being submerged too deeply. And the reason for that is that we are almost certainly, as I mentioned, going to be doing a photo bleach in conjunction with this wash and deacidification. So I may need a little bit more paper than, or rather solution than this. I might have to go to, say, 300 mils. We'll see. I want to make sure that I do get it all wet. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I have some distilled water here just to make sure that we don't get any area of this, because it's not getting wet with the rest. I don't want any area to get tide marks. So I'm just going to spray it. And I could have done that prior to putting the solution on. All right, I am going to add probably another 100 mils or so. So I'm going to mix that off screen. I'll be back in a moment. All right, here's another 150 mils. Again, of half saturated calcium hydroxide. And I added that because you'll note that this tray has these ridges in it, and the water was not quite to the top of those ridges, so the paper was starting to do this in the ridges, and I didn't want that. So the pH of this solution is actually quite high, but it's not unsafe for your fingers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to expose this to blue light, like we talked about in my photo bleaching video that I did for TJ's Marvel Premiere number 28 and go back and check that out. So we're going to have a blue LED setup that is focused at 450 to 460 nanometers. And while I'm soaking this, I'm going to simultaneously expose it to that light. And I expect that that will help bleach, especially these mold marks, but we'll see what kind of results we get. I'll do that off camera and show you results soon.